Hey guys, Native American Tatanka. You're listening to We Are Wrestling, old school versus new school. It's again Native American Tatanka. Peace. I'm out.
Stick to what you know how to do best. That's talking to that and sign checks. Yeah. Leave the wrestling to me, Daddy.
Up goes Blanchard. My hard-earned tax money.
1, 2, 3. Guaranteed victory.
It's always you, Brett.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
I can tell you it's going to be a day that I'm never going to forget.
A lot of things I want to get off my chest.
What is up? We are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide. I'm the host with the most, the best one, Dottie, here with
the Armenian Nightmare, the beast from the Middle East, Chaz. Woo!
And this is a brand new episode of Old School versus New School. And this is the first video for WrestleMania week. It is going to be a huge week, nothing but WrestleMania related content coming out to the We Are Wrestling channel this week. But if you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, and you're not a part of the thousands of subscribers, the best way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button now, turning on the post notifications, videos be coming out of nowhere like an RKO, and of course, you already know, the grind is real. And this week for Old School versus New School, since we need to do an episode WrestleMania related, we decided that we are going to talk about the streak.
Oh, what better?
And if in case you live under a rock or you didn't know, the Phenom, the Dead Man, the Undertaker, one of the most legendary superstars in the World Wrestling Entertainment, had one of the greatest WrestleMania streaks of all time, going 21-0 until WrestleMania 30, where Brock Lesnar decided to end the streak. And we're going to dive into all of that. We're going to be going over each match during, Undertaker's WrestleMania streaks and really, talk about the rivalries going into them and the matches and break it all down for you.
Break it down. Yeah.
And believe it or not, actually, Chaz, I know all the matches on the top of my head.
Oh, yeah?
That Undertaker was undefeated for.
Yeah? What's... And he actually does. This is actually really impressive. Go ahead.
That's right. And I am right now, guys, for heads up, I do not have my notes whatsoever.
No.
I am going to be looking right at the camera right there.
This is for real.
All right. So Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. This is how you guys know I am an encyclopedia when it comes to professional wrestling and sports entertainment. And that is why they say I am the host with the most. So here we go. So the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, it all started in 1991 at WrestleMania 7 when he went against Superfly Jimmy Snuka and pretty much gave him the tombstone. 1, 2, 3. The Undertaker was the winner. Then we go on to WrestleMania 8 where the Undertaker went against Jake the Snake Roberts. And then the Undertaker ended up tombstoning him right with his fucking Python, and then Undertaker ended up winning that. Then going on to WrestleMania 9 in the Coliseum, the Undertaker probably had the worst WrestleMania match of his career when he had to go against Giant Gonzalez, who actually, by the way, is a lot better than Omos, and the Undertaker buried his ass. I believe he won by a DQ. Then we go on to WrestleMania 10. The Undertaker wasn't around. He didn't do anything because Yokozuna put him in the casket, and he disappeared. Then we go on to WrestleMania 11. It was the Undertaker versus King Kong Bundy. He was part of the $1 Million Man Corporation. The Undertaker freaking tombstone his 500-pound ass. Then we go on to WrestleMania 12, where The Undertaker went on against Diesel and we all knew what happened. The Undertaker ended up beating Diesel, who was one of the worst WWF champions of all time during the 1990s New Generation. Then we go on to WrestleMania 13. It was The Undertaker versus Psycho Sid, and The Undertaker ended up beating him and becoming the new WWF champion. Then we go on to WrestleMania 14, one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time, where The Undertaker went against his brother, my God, Kane, with Paul Bearer by his side, and The Undertaker ended up beating him. What a classic match. Then we go on to WrestleMania 15, inside the Hell in the Cell. It was The Undertaker versus the Big Boss Man. He ended up beating him and then hanging him from the Hell in the Cell. Then we go on to WrestleMania 16. The Undertaker, I don't know where he was at this time. He was transitioning from being a dead man, a zombie, to being the American Badass Undertaker. Then we go on to WrestleMania 17. Yes, 17. It was The Undertaker versus Triple H in a Falls Count Anywhere match. They absolutely killed it. One of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. Then we go on to WrestleMania 18. It was The Undertaker versus the Nature Boy, woo, Ric Flair. And he ended up beating him. And then go to WrestleMania 19. One of the most confusing matches of all time. American Badass Undertaker had to wrestle not one, but two people, 2-on-1 handicap match. And you're not going to believe who it was. It was A-Train and the Big Show.
The Big Slow.
And The Undertaker ended up beating both of them at the same time. Then we go on to WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Gardens. The Dead Man made his return with Paul Bearer and went against the friggin' Red Monster Kane and ended up beating Kane. Then we go on to WrestleMania 21. The Undertaker went against the Legend Killer himself, Randy Orton, one of the most underrated classics out there. Then you go on to WrestleMania 22. We had The Undertaker versus Mark Henry inside the casket. Ended up being the world's strongest man. And then we go on to WrestleMania 23 for the World Heavyweight Championship. The Undertaker, because he won the Royal Rumble that year, went on to go against the Animal Batista and ended up beating him and then ended up losing the title on SmackDown to Edge, who cashed in the Money in the Bank. And then we go on to WrestleMania 24, the main event of WrestleMania 24 in Miami, Florida. He went against the Rated R superstar Edge and ended up beating Edge, which a lot of people wanted Edge to actually be the one to end the streak from The Undertaker, but Edge didn't want to do it. So The Undertaker ended up winning. Then we go on to WrestleMania 25. It was The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels for the first time. What a classic. Then we go on to WrestleMania 26. Again, another classic. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. And if Shawn Michaels lost, his career was over, and Undertaker ended up tombstoning him and ending his career. Then we go on to WrestleMania 27. We had a Falls Count Anywhere type of match. It was The Undertaker versus the Game, Triple H, and we saw The Undertaker beat him. And then we go on to WrestleMania 28, the end of an era. We had a Hell in a Cell match between Triple H and The Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee, and you all thought that Triple H was going to end up winning. Ha! Joke's on you, because The Undertaker ended up beating you. And then we go on to WrestleMania 29, where The Undertaker went against the best in the world, CM Punk, who actually ended up taking Paul Bearer's ashes in Undertaker's urn and actually, you know, pretty much ruining and embarrassing Paul Bearer after what happened, unfortunately. And we saw The Undertaker end up beating CM Punk. And then we go on to WrestleMania 30. And that is where he had a concussion and Brock Lesnar ended the streak. So, yeah, that was a nice, quick little summary of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. What do you think, Jazz?
First of all,
I need a water.
Decaf. No, he don't drink coffee. But holy shit, that was one take for anybody who thinks that was, you know, there was editing involved in that. And wow, very impressive. Holy shit, that was awesome.
And I think that definitely qualifies you and I, old school Chaz, to talk about The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak.
Yeah. And now I feel stupid. But yeah, no, that was great. That was awesome. Very, very impressive.
And I appreciate that, because I acknowledge myself for that. Wow.
You should.
Incredible. Well, you should. So with that being said, let's get into The Undertaker's undefeated WrestleMania streak.
Yes, sir.
And it all started at WrestleMania 7, where The Undertaker went against Superfly Jimmy Snuka on March 24th, 1991. So before we get into the first WrestleMania match, Chaz, I want to know, was this always the plan for The Undertaker to be undefeated at WrestleMania, or was it something that just like coincidentally happened? And then like when he started picking up more wins, it became like a thing?
No, it was never a plan. It was never a plan. And I know this for a fact because I recently, I've listened to a few podcasts about it, but was listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson. And, you know, Conrad had asked Bruce about it and, you know, that same exact question. And he said, no, it was definitely not a plan, planned, but they saw how it just kept going and going and going. And they're like, you know, let's make this happen. Plus I saw him, you know, in the Stone Cold, asked him on his podcast, the Broken Skull sessions, which is freaking amazing. By the way, if nobody's seen it, definitely check that out on Peacock. It was so cool, and we'll get into later our opinions on if it should have been Brock Lesnar or not. And
that's the thing with this week's episode of Old School versus New School. We're going back down memory lane, and we're going to start from the very beginning of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak to the end of his streak. And he started off against Superfly Jimmy Snuka.
Yep.
And around the time, I believe it was November of 1990, that's when The Undertaker made his debut with Brother Love.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. That was in Hartford, Connecticut, which is right down the street from us, pretty much. Survivor Series. And
so that's the thing I want to know, Chaz. When it comes to WrestleMania 7 with Superfly Jimmy Snuka, how was the build-up for this WrestleMania match?
Really wasn't that much of a build-up, to be honest. That's why we were talking earlier, and you're like, was it a good match? And I was like, it's kind of like the drizzling shits, to be honest. Really wasn't that huge of a build-up.
So with Superfly Jimmy Snuka, obviously we all know, New School fans know that he is, famous for jumping off the steel cage in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and getting a coconut smashed against his head.
That was around the 80s, right?
That was 1980, 81. And that's the match actually Mick Foley had hitchhiked to go see at Madison Square Garden.
And of course, with Superfly Jimmy Snuka, like we know, the famous, Piper's Pit with, Roddy Piper hitting the coconut on Superfly's head.
Which was
so
real.
Around this time, like, was Superfly Jimmy Snuka like putting over guys, would you say? Or was he still like a very popular character around this time?
He was over, but he was getting toward the end of his, he was basically jobbing to guys, he was, and it was sad to see him in that, somebody that was such a huge character and such a popular wrestler, to be involved in such, always in the title, Intercontinental title picture with Greg Valentine, and had such a great feud with Roddy Piper and, against guys like Cowboy Bob Orton. But yeah, it just to see him like that, it was just so sad. But yeah, he definitely was jobbing.
So around this time with The Undertaker, because of course, in November of 1990 in Hartford, Survivor Series, we saw him make his debut. So around this time, going into WrestleMania, he was pretty much going against jobbers, and they were trying to, put Undertaker over.
Yeah. See, that's the thing about back in the day. They, on TV, what they would do is they would have jobbers or enhancement talent, because I really don't like the word jobber, because if you're in the WWF or WWE, let's face it, even if you're a jobber, you're still a professional wrestler. You made it, and, you still made it to the big time. That was the big dance. New York was what they would do is the big names would wrestle on Saturday mornings, Superstars or Challenge, which I loved, because they would have wrestle against the enhancement talent, and they would save the big matches for the pay-per-views, which was the thing to do. Now they give away everything on every show, and it's like the same thing. That's why people get sick. It's like the same matches over and over and over, because you're wrestling on SmackDown or Raw or, Dynamite or whatever it is. And then you're also wrestling the same matches on the pay-per-views. So what's new,
And also the house shows too, they're wrestling the same people over and over again.
Well,
like Cody Rhodes. With like New School, Cody Rhodes went against Seth Rollins 3 pay-per-views, and then like the house shows, they went against each other probably at least like 10 to 20 times.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing to do at the house shows. They would like I told you in the Macho Man, the episode when we watched the Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat match, the 2 WrestleMania matches. And they would do that. They would wrestle against each other a bunch of times to kind of practice, kind of hone their matches. They would go on a loop so they'd wrestle one guy for like a month and then wrestle other guys, like Brainbusters against the Rockers would do that, you know. So, and then TV was a different story.
So from the looks of it, on the notes I have here, the match time for Undertaker versus Superfly Jimmy Snuka was 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
420.
And that's the thing, like with the Undertaker, that's what it seemed like they did. They slowly built him up. He was going against jobbers and legends until I believe it was the Survivor Series, right? Of 1991, where he won the championship against Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. And he was squashing people, and that because he was they wanted to build him up. They did the right thing with him. They built him up like a monster that he was. He was unstoppable. And they did the right thing with him as far as character wise.
So do you think in 1991, when the Undertaker won his first, WWF championship, do you think it was too soon as an old school fan?
Yeah, I do. And maybe in a way, I don't think I think he was a character kind of like a Bray Wyatt. I didn't think he needed a championship at the time, and it might have been a little too soon. I think they were just trying to do something different and trying to take the belt off of Hogan. Yeah, I think they just were looking to do something different and get Hogan was doing his movies and stuff. So yeah, maybe it was a little too soon. I don't know if he exactly needed the belt. Hey, it was what it was, as much as I hate that saying.
Yeah, so going into the Undertaker's second WrestleMania match, at WrestleMania 8, we saw the Undertaker go against Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on this build-up and the match itself being an old school fan?
This was a decent build-up because they would have Jake was actually on the funeral parlor.
Yes, I do remember. I remember seeing that with Paul Bearer and him.
And Jake actually slammed the casket on Undertaker's hand, and he just kept coming at Jake and coming at him, and he just was dragging the casket. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember that segment.
Was so freaking awesome. I mean, it was such a great buildup. I actually listened to Jake's podcast, the DDT, him and DDP's podcast. It was really, really good. The way he was talking about he was just talking about this match. And I remember that vividly watching that. And then he just literally they were showing him making they would show him the vignettes. They would, they did the buildups right back then, and then they have the two guys, because Undertaker looked up to Jake the Snake. He was one of his mentors as far as his promos and stuff.
Well, both characters were very dark too at the time.
Absolutely. They were slow. They were methodic. And, I remember one of the sayings Jake said, he said, "You're not going to scare me." He said, I've danced with the devil many times, something like that. And it was a really good buildup for this one.
And I think that's the reason why it works so well, because Undertaker at the time wasn't talking. That's why they had Paul Bearer with him. Yep. But Jake the Snake was always known as one of the best, on the microphone when it came to cutting a promo.
Yeah.
And I think him and Paul Bearer, they really worked well together to build this match with him and Undertaker.
And the great thing about Jake is he was one of the greatest on the mic, and he didn't have to scream. He was one of the first he was probably the first wrestler that did the best promos, and he didn't have to yell. He spoke so softly.
It scared you.
And it scared the shit out of you. Exactly.
And this match, at WrestleMania 8 was only 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing the times here in the beginning of the Undertaker streak matches. Was this a normal thing for old WrestleManias, that they would have shorter matches, or
for certain thing? I think it was a little of both for certain characters. It wasn't as long of a WrestleMania as the newer WrestleManias. But I don't think they wanted to. I think they wanted to keep his matches shorter because they didn't want to expose him. I think they just wanted him to go out there, especially like against Superfly. He squashed him last year, squashed Jake this year, and just two superstars that were on top of the WWF, and then for this guy to come out and just squash him like in that amount of time was crazy.
Yeah, because around the time that was towards the end of Jake the Snake's, wrestling career in WWF, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually his last match in WWF for a while.
Yeah, until 1996, 1995.
96 until when Stone Cold, King of the Ring. Yeah.
We noticed, Undertaker ended up beating Jake 2-0. So now going into WrestleMania 9, one of my favorite WrestleManias, that's like where I started to get into wrestling because at a young age, I grew up, I was born in 1997, but I got into wrestling around like 2000. And one of the things my dad, my mom always, brought me to was Hollywood Home Videos and Blockbuster. I've talked about this on, the Old School
always talk about
podcast.
This.
And I've always, rented out the VCRs of, these old WrestleManias and old Coliseum videos.
Coliseum, baby.
I got the opportunity to watch a lot of old school wrestling because of that. And that's how much I loved WWE. I loved going back, watching a lot of this stuff. And for me, I always remembered WrestleMania 9 as one of my favorites because I loved, Las Vegas, the Coliseum. Yeah. I loved the theme for that WrestleMania. And it always just really
I loved it because it was outside. It was different. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So going into WrestleMania 9, this time around, The Undertaker is not working with a legend that's, almost towards the end of their career. He's working with a new giant known as Giant Gonzalez.
Yeah.
The guy that was 8 foot tall that wore the weirdest wrestling gear I've ever seen.
Yeah. He looked like a freaking, like a Sasquatch, basically. He was like a big Guatemalan Sasquatch.
With Giant Gonzalez, do you know the idea behind the character? I never figured it out.
I never really, I don't
never
know.
gave a shit.
They never gave a shit. Yeah, exactly. You just saw the look on my face. Yeah. You know me too well. No, I have no clue. We're going to have to look that up just for the hell of it, just to see. Cause him and there was Giant Gonzalez and LA
didn't he have like a Pee Wee Herman manager with him?
Harvey Wimpleman.
He was like 5 foot tall. He had these square glasses like Jim Cornette.
Yeah, Harvey Wippleman. Yep.
He was built like an elementary school girl.
He was built like a 10-year-old girl. Yeah.
I remember having their WWF the WWE Classic Superstars, the Jacks. I had the 2-pack for them.
Wow. Harvey Wippleman was actually in the car when Gorilla Monsoon's son was killed.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, he was best friends with him, Joey Morella.
Wow. Yeah. So going into this WrestleMania, it looked like they wanted to put Giant Gonzalez over because in this match, it went on for 7 minutes and 33 seconds, and it ended up being a disqualification. That's how The Undertaker won this match.
Yeah, they were trying to do something with him. I've heard Arn talk about him many times, him and Elegante, and how they're just terrible.
The worst wrestling gear I've ever seen in my entire life. But when it comes down to it, I'm surprised. I'm glad that they didn't have Giant Gonzalez beat The Undertaker because we would have never had the streak if they decided because they wanted to put Giant Gonzalez over in this situation. But instead of, having him pin The Undertaker and beat him, they actually ended up just having a disqualification so that he looked good, even though he didn't look good. And The Undertaker, also got a win.
Right.
Was there ever a payoff after this WrestleMania with these two or no?
No. It was definitely a one-off. Somebody like him, you cannot, I don't care who you put him in there with, you're not going to get any kind of good match out of him.
Come on, Giant Gonzalez versus Omos.
He was, oh God. Oh my God. What a fucking classic that would be. That would put Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man in WrestleMania 3 to shame. Are you shitting me?
Oh my God.
Wow.
Well, Omos, in case you guys don't know, if you're just old school fans watching this, in case you guys don't know, right now in WWE, they pretty much have this guy. His name is Omos. He's greener than the Green Giant himself, and he's the drizzling shits.
He is greener than freaking donkey shit. I mean,
and if you want to see him, you know, have the drizzling shits on either Saturday or Sunday against Brock Lesnar, you'll definitely have a wonderful time watching that.
Lesnar.
It is poor Brock Lesnar because literally Omos freaking, you know, when he threw him out of the ring a few Mondays back, he freaking botched it.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. If you want to watch Omos, you know, have the drizzling shits and watch, you know, you want to watch somebody that's so good, like Giant Gonzalez, tune in to WrestleMania on Saturday or Sunday and watch this guy put on a classic with Brock Lesnar. It's going to be way better than the match that Brock Lesnar had with Kurt Angle at 19.
Oh,
better
absolutely.
than WrestleMania
Absolutely.
30 with The Undertaker. It's going to be better than the match with Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. This is going to be a classic you're not going
Dude,
to.
I want to do an extra with you on what Dave Meltzer says about this match. just because.
Hey, we'll have to see. So good thing Bruce Pritchard good thing Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn, they decided not to have The Undertaker lose this match because we would have never had the streak.
Yep.
So thank God Vince McMahon decided to, you know, do this.
Yep.
Still should have just had The Undertaker tombstone this fucking giant 1, 2, 3, and then he goes off to wherever he came from. So moving on now to The Undertaker's 4th WrestleMania match. At WrestleMania 10, The Undertaker did not wrestle at all during this because at the Royal Rumble in 94, he went against Yokozuna with, you know, the WWF Championship on the line, and Yokozuna ended up beating The Undertaker, and all of these heels ended up, you know, putting Undertaker in the casket, and we didn't get to see The Undertaker come back until the Survivor Series in 1994.
Yep.
So then we go into WrestleMania 11, the WrestleMania you actually went to.
I was there, baby. Yes.
And around the time The Undertaker was feuding with, you know, the $1 Million Corporation, and he went against King Kong Bundy. So being there in the Hartford Civic Center, what was your thoughts on this match? Watching it live.
It was weird because this is another one there really wasn't a build up to. I mean, kind of, but not like it should have been. See, it's weird because he beat two great superstars, and then Giant Gonzalez, freaking drizzling shits, and then he's going against another, you know, classic superstar.
This was towards the end of King Kong's career
Bundy.
too, right? In the ring. This was towards the end of his in-ring career.
Yep. Are you seeing a pattern here? You seeing a theme here?
I'm starting to see the theme here because this match was hold on, 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
Yeah. So you're starting to see Undertaker's retiring dudes. Like,
and then didn't like SummerSlam that year, he went against another Undertaker.
Yep.
And like, it was basically like an imposter Undertaker versus the Undertaker. And that's when he debuted that mask.
Yes.
He broke his face or nose. Yeah. Because with the Undertaker,
that was really weird.
So with him and King Kong Bundy, that was just like a weird match that happened at that show.
Yeah, that was even at being there. I mean, I always kind of liked Bundy, and I mean, just he was cool because I remember WrestleMania 2, you know, and him and Hogan and the Big Blue, and so Bundy was always like a cool heel, and so I thought it was going to be a lot better than what it was, and I thought, you know, having. Especially because he, you know, had been with Bobby Heenan, and you know but it's what he needed. It's what they needed to they were doing the right thing. Back in the day, they did the right thing with characters, you know. And
so now moving on to Undertaker's 5th match. This is, you know, this was more of a actual challenge at WrestleMania. We go into WrestleMania 12. Undertaker versus Diesel.
Yes.
And around the time, you know, WWF, they had very high hopes for Diesel, Kevin Nash. and they, you know, gave him a pretty strong build. They had him with Shawn Michaels for a little while, and then they had, you know, Diesel turn on Shawn Michaels, and then, you know, pretty much going on working with, you know, guys like The Undertaker and, you know, winning the WWF champion, one of the worst champions.
He was the worst drawing as far as house shows. He was the worst drawing WWF champion in history until at that point.
And it's crazy because he was so much better when he was Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Like he had a way better run in WCW.
Diesel
than
was
he
a
did in
pretty good
WWF.
character, though. I liked Diesel when he first came in, and I watched a thing last night on Wrestling Bios, the Wrestling Bios channel, Shawn DX special, and Shawn Michaels. They talked about how Shawn Michaels, you know, brought him in because he liked his Kevin's old character Vinny Vegas from WCW. And he was looking for not only a best friend, or actually a good friend at the time, but he was looking for, you know, he wanted a bodyguard. And, you know, he was like, I kind of like, and this is kind of like at the time, the same time when Razor, you know, had just befriended, you know, Sean Waltman, you know, 1, 2, 3 Kid. And definitely when they first brought him in, he still looked like Vinny Vegas. You know, he had the short hair and stuff. So
yeah, he had like the mullet.
Yeah. And it was a really cool character. I gotta say, it was, you know, they had the truck sound from, you know,
I gotta say, I loved his entrance music.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was pretty, and he was, you know, the jackknife, the power bomb. I mean, he was pretty, and then they won the tag team belts. He was a strong character. He just, when he won he squashed Bob Backlund in like freaking 5 seconds or something crazy like that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that was so weird. Like in '94,
like,
you had Bob Backlund beat Bret Hart because Owen, you know, threw the towel in.
Yeah.
And then like just had a random house show. You have Diesel
and a house show yet.
Bob Backlund.
Yeah. I mean, and that's like, I mean, I remember at a house show, well, same thing. Remember being at a house show, seeing the Mountie beat in Springfield Civic Center. Mountie beat Bret Hart for the IC belt. And 2 days later, he lost it to Roddy Piper at the Royal Rumble.
But you see here, something I'm noticing here with, you know, the streak so far, like being at 5-0, I'm noticing a pattern here with the WWF Championship. Like in the fall, somebody wins it. Like you go back to, I believe, like 1991 with Undertaker beating Hulk Hogan. And then they have the title vacant at Royal Rumble to where Ric Flair ends up winning it. And then, you know, like even with Diesel, he beats, you know, Bob Backlund, and then he loses the title around like, you know, the road to WrestleMania. And then, you know, he goes against The Undertaker.
Yep.
Sean and Brett, you know, were doing their classic Iron Man.
Yeah.
So I always thought that, like, I'm noticing a pattern here. Like the championships, like they changed a lot.
Well, they gave the belt at the time. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's still the same, but they gave the championship to the guy who was the best draw, you know, the best house show draw at the time. And I guess Diesel, he became not the best house show draw after winning the belt, but because of him with Michaels, they always drew good. So,
and then of course, you know, months later we saw Diesel and, you know, Razor Ramon go on WCW and form the NWO with Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Yep. Oh, so fun fact, hold on. The guy that played the fake Razor, by the way, we all know fake Diesel was Kane, you know, Glenn Jacobs. The guy that played the fake Razor was the same guy who played the fake Undertaker, by the way.
No way.
I just blew your mind, didn't I?
Yeah, that I did not know at all.
Yes, sir.
So the fake Undertaker was the fake Razor.
Yes.
Poor guy.
Yep.
Did he end up having like a career like after doing these fake?
His name was like Brian something. I forgot his name, but he
that was
he
like
died.
His big break was doing those.
They brought him they were trying him out. They're going to try him out in WCW or something like that. But yeah, he he didn't have much of a career.
That sucks for him. Damn. Hey, but at least, you know, he got to say, hey, I'm the fake Razor.
Yeah.
How you doing?
He had his moment, you know.
Undertaker. Which that was like one of the main events at that
Absolutely.
SummerSlam too.
Yeah.
So that's still pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Still, like, that does kind of suck that he had to be like a fake.
Yeah, I mean, 2 fake characters, you know.
And that was like his big break in the business.
Right.
So now, you know, moving on to WrestleMania 13. In 1997, The Undertaker went on to face Psycho Sid for the WWF Championship, and we saw The Undertaker win his second world championship.
Yes.
Time.
Which actually, at that point, he definitely had, you know, it was right at that time, you know, and it made sense. And that wasn't a bad match. I mean, you know, for him to go against, because Psycho Sid was built up as this great freaking monster, and you always hear Arn Anderson build him up as when he was with the 4 Horsemen. He was such a great, you know, he was so great on the mic, and he was just I mean, he had a great build. He was just such a great, huge monster, great looking guy. You know, like he could work pretty well.
Had the charisma too. Like in the promos, like you really felt the intensity.
Oh yeah, he was nuts. You know.
So how was the build for this match with Psycho Sid and The Undertaker?
From what I remember, it was pretty good. It wasn't bad. I mean, this was the first real match. I felt this is the first time in a WrestleMania I really felt that he really had, well, besides, you know, Diesel, but he really had somebody that could really match him, you know, decently, you know, like he deserved.
Yeah, and around the time Psycho Sid was a very good heel.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Of course, he, you know, turned on Shawn because he was, you know, the bodyguard for him after Diesel. Yeah. And they had a pretty solid, you know, build for this WrestleMania. But it's so weird to think about because in 97, Undertaker didn't win the Royal Rumble. So, like, that's something for me that I criticize, like, looking back. Because, like, around the time of the Royal Rumble, if you won that match, you go on to WrestleMania.
Right.
And wasn't it Shawn that won and then he lost a smile or something like that?
Yep. And he had to give up the belt and everything.
And then Psycho Sid ended up winning it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the time where I felt like The Undertaker, it felt right winning the championship. Like, it felt like it was, you know, that big moment for him.
Definitely.
He's worked so hard for to get to this point. And I think, like, him and Psycho Sid, like, out of all the matches that I've seen, out of all of them so far, I gotta say the Psycho Sid one was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, this was definitely my favorite so far. It was definitely the best one. The most evenly matched.
And the match was 21 minutes and 19 seconds.
Yeah.
So, moving on now to WrestleMania 14, probably one of the best Undertaker rivalries in his career. We saw the Big Red Monster, Kane, make his debut at Bad Blood in 1997 when The Undertaker went against Shawn Michaels in the Hell in the Cell. And then, you know, we had this build. We had the whole story behind it with Paul Bearer.
One of the best storylines in history.
Live. And, you know, the Royal Rumble, Undertaker, you know, loses the casket match to Shawn Michaels because Kane, you know, helps and burns the casket. And we get the brother versus brother match for Mania 14.
Such a great build, such a great storyline, freaking amazing. All three of them, Paul Bearer, Kane, Undertaker, all and Paul Bearer really sold that. I mean, they all such an amazing freaking build. Such an amazing build up.
And great storytelling too, because they didn't have Kane come right away. They really built it up with Paul Bearer and they really, you know, told the story, the backstory before the story.
Yeah, they took the time.
And that's the thing, man. Like, when it comes down to it, like, for me, Kane was definitely one of my favorite WrestleMania matches with The Undertaker.
Oh, definitely.
Because even the entrance for The Undertaker, you had, like, all these guys come out with the torches, with the fire. and just Undertaker slowly walking to the ring. Like, you felt the energy
Oh,
of that
yeah.
rivalry and match. But guys, we'll be right back with more old school versus new school. We're back, and we just got done talking about Undertaker versus Kane, WrestleMania 14, where The Undertaker became 7-0 in WrestleMania. So, moving on now to a year later, WrestleMania 15. The Undertaker went on to face the Big Boss Man in a Hell in a Cell match.
At the time, it's just cringy to I mean, obviously it got, it doesn't get shown now for obvious reasons, but it because it's so cringy to watch now. But so Big Boss Man was in he's in the corporation, right?
It was the corporation / Ministry of Darkness.
Yeah, that was. But I mean, just when they hung him at the end, it was just wow. I mean, it was weird. It was weird at the time, even though knowing it was, fake. But especially after Boss Man died, it was like, oh my gosh, like what the hell.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, like how I felt about the match with Undertaker and Big Boss Man. I felt like this could have been a lot better, because the match was only 9 minutes and 48 seconds, and they only did it really for that spot.
Yeah.
Hanging the Big Boss Man up there, which was so weird.
Yeah.
And the thing is, here's a hot take.
Yep.
And I don't know how, old school versus new school fans are going to take this take. My thoughts on the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker, I was not a fan of it. I didn't enjoy that run of The Undertaker. And maybe it was because of the timing. It was the Attitude Era where they were going more into reality-based like WCW, and The Undertaker at the time didn't adapt yet to the American Badass. Or, he was putting on these classics with Psycho Sid and Kane, and then he goes on, doing the Ministry of Darkness. I feel like it's more like hokey pokey.
I thought it was too cartoony.
Yes.
He had that cape, and he looked like the Count from fucking Sesame Street. It's just, I didn't like that character. I didn't like it.
A lot of people, they look back and they say, the Ministry Undertaker was one of the best. For me, I really didn't enjoy that. He had a cool look.
Yeah, the look
I didn't enjoy that run. It felt very
it's just cheesy.
They're shoving it in our face.
It was just cheesy. I don't know.
Yeah. But then, now we get into, after, 1999, Undertaker, is realizing that he needs to adapt. He needs to change because he's been doing, the dead man thing for almost 10 years at this point. So he comes back in 2000 as, American Badass Undertaker, coming out to Kid Rock. And then eventually, Limp Bizkit, rolling.
Absolutely.
And at WrestleMania 16, we didn't see The Undertaker wrestle because he wasn't back yet. But now we go into 2001, WrestleMania 17. It was Triple H versus The Undertaker. Anything goes. And I gotta say, watching this match, this WrestleMania was fantastic. And seeing this match was so good. Definitely a big fan of, the build for this match. And they did a fantastic job, going all over the arena. Triple H was selling, the last ride. It was amazing.
Oh, absolutely. That was, both had great entrances. And that was, his, and I know that's your favorite Undertaker, so.
My favorite Undertaker. You got that right. American Badass all fucking day, man.
Yep.
So then we move on, to WrestleMania 18, March 17th, 2002. The Undertaker goes against Ric Flair. And believe it or not, this was the first time that the streak was actually acknowledged during this time. So this is when the streak thing was being, kept tracked. They were keeping, track of it. And this match was a no disqualification match between the two. How did you feel about this match with Ric Flair?
Oh, it made total sense. For him to go against such a legend, he had already knocked down so many legends prior. Nobody in the same ballpark as Flair. They had been maybe in the past somewhat, maybe Snuka was sort of, as far as popularity, but nowhere as far as wrestling ability, but this is definitely his first real challenge as far as besides Triple H, of course, but Triple H was definitely awesome. But this is where he definitely was facing somebody that he definitely looked up to and, was going to be really challenged for sure.
And that's the thing, like for me, my thoughts, on, the buildup, I felt like it could have been better.
Oh, the buildup could have been better for sure.
The match was fantastic. And I loved this match because like we saw a whole different side of both The Undertaker and Ric Flair. They really, showed a different side of them like in the ring, because obviously we both know they're great storytellers. And they really, went beyond during this no disqualification match. Like I remember Ric Flair bleeding all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And he made American Badass Undertaker look so strong.
Yes. That's what great thing about Flair is, people talk about Flair being, selfish and all this, Flair could put people over. Flair knew how to put people over. Flair would sell his ass off.
And honestly, like it was a good time that he did that. He sold for Undertaker because Ric Flair kind of got lost in the shuffle after the whole GM thing with Vince McMahon. And then I was glad that months later they paired him up with Triple H, because then we got a whole other side of Triple H during the Ruthless Aggression.
Oh, yes.
That was fantastic. And then eventually we had Evolution.
Yeah, and that was even great for Flair because it made him feel young again. Yeah, with the Evolution, it made him feel like
more years left in his career because of it.
Yeah, it made him feel like the Horseman again, almost,
Yeah. So moving on now to WrestleMania 19. We had a 2-on-1 handicap match. So The Undertaker had not one, but two opponents. He went on to face A-Train and The Big Show. And I could tell you, because this is when I really was watching all the shows. I was watching Monday Night Raw. I was watching Thursday Night SmackDown. And, I could tell you, this was a match that I just wasn't happy with.
It was terrible.
Like, we have to go. We're doing a whole episode here on The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. And the fact that we have to talk about A-Train and Big Show against The Undertaker in a handicap match on the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania, is a fucking joke.
After he just fought Triple H and Ric Flair.
And Kane and
Kane, too.
And Jake the Snake,
Jimmy,
and
freaking
Snuka and King
Snuka,
Kong and he goes on to doing a 2-on-1 handicap match. This would be a match that I would book at a fucking house show, Chad. A house show. Now, Big Show versus Undertaker, that would have been good.
Yeah.
But why fucking A-Train?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, absolutely. You didn't need his freaking big hairy back in there.
There were so many better opponents around that time that they could have had with The Undertaker, but obviously at this WrestleMania, they had bigger plans. They were more focused on the Brock versus Kurt Angle match, and of course, The Rock versus Stone Cold for the last time.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that Undertaker, pretty much had a squash match at this point, 11-0, against two people that at the time they didn't really know what to do with.
And it sucks because the streak was starting to build momentum. And he was starting to look, knocked down. His opponents were getting better. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing as far as the streak is. But as far as the streak's going, the opponents are getting better.
They pulled a 180 because in 2002, The Undertaker was having classics.
Yeah.
Because around that time, he had that great feud with Brock Lesnar. They had, they sold freaking SmackDown pay-per-view main events. Yep. Inside, Hell in the Cell, anything goes. Fantastic feuds The Undertaker was having at this time in matches. And then he goes from pretty much working with one of the best Brock Lesnar's at the time to A-Train and Big Show. And around the time, Big Show even will say to this day, like, that wasn't the best Big Show in 2003.
No. And even Big Show, if it was a singles match, it still would have been better than...
It would have been way better.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the Big Show and Undertaker.
It wasn't the best Big Show.
I don't know why they threw A-Train in there. Like, it was cool having the Undertaker, the motorcycle, and the United States flag. That was the only cool thing out of that moment was that shot with him, on the motorcycle. But besides that, nothing special. Moving on now to WrestleMania 20. This is where I start to believe the streak feels very important. And they start to, really make it a thing. So he was American Badass Undertaker from 2000 all the way to 2004. Or no, 2003 Survivor Series when Kane, screwed The Undertaker in the match against Vince McMahon in the Buried Alive match. So they buried him, and he came back as the Dead Man at WrestleMania 20, which I think was a really cool spot for him to come back as the Dead Man. It felt right. And especially with, Bruce Pritchard on his podcast, Something to Wrestle. This is an episode I did watch. The idea for WrestleMania 20 was they wanted to go back nostalgia. Going back to the old days with WrestleMania 1 and going back to, the classic days. And what better way to do that than with the Dead Man?
Yeah. And Madison Square Garden,
And, the home for the WWE. And I got to say, with this build with the Kane, I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed it, but not as much as the feud that they had in 97, 98. But it was still a very good feud because, of course, Kane at the time got unmasked. He had this whole other side to him, looked incredible. And then, Survivor Series comes. He screws The Undertaker, buries him alive, his own brother. And then that leads to the Rumble where Undertaker, screws Kane out of the Rumble match. And he didn't even make an appearance until WrestleMania, which made it feel even more special.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I gotta say, this was a very, this was a cool match. Even though it was only 7 minutes and 45 seconds, it felt like an old Undertaker match.
Yes.
And as an old school fan, I definitely know you can appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. And it was cool to see that. I really liked the American Badass Undertaker, but if he had started as that, but to me, just calling him, having that character and calling him the Undertaker and being a biker, it just didn't make sense. I mean, obviously they weren't going to call him something else because he was already known as the Undertaker.
Well, with Ruthless Aggression, I think it was a perfect time for him to go back to being the Dead Man.
Yes.
Because the Attitude Era was over and he did a fantastic job as American Badass Undertaker during that time. But it was time for him to go back to where he started. And I know Undertaker, even said he was very hesitant to go back to the Dead Man because he didn't know how fans were going to react. But after, that performance at Mania 20, all just fell right into place. And then he had a feud with one of the hottest heels at the time on SmackDown, JBL, for, the WWE Championship. And, they really built The Undertaker back up. But it felt weird at the same time because, of course, you go into 1997, 1998, Undertaker starts to pick up the pace in his matches. And then in, this WrestleMania match, he goes back to doing the super slow pace work.
Yes.
But I do like how throughout the time, which, we're going to get into here, he starts to bring the pace with his character, which, I think really helped The Undertaker that he took a step back in his career because we all knew he was what he was capable of doing, but because he was playing the character The Undertaker, he had to, have some, precautions.
Yeah, he had to just ease it back a little bit.
Absolutely, man. But now, going into WrestleMania 21, this is probably one of my top 3 Undertaker matches. The Undertaker went against the Legend Killer, Randy Orton.
Oh, great match.
And this was the first time in the Undertaker streak that Randy Orton in the feud acknowledged that he was ready to end the streak because of him being the Legend Killer.
Wow.
And I got to say, this friggin' rivalry with Randy Orton and Undertaker in 2005 was fantastic. They did a great job with this because, of course, at the time, they were building Randy Orton up as the Legend Killer. He would always take out legends, and he would put on classics with them, like, Backlash 2004. He went against, Mick Foley in a great, anything goes match. Mm-hmm. And, Randy with all the thumbtacks in his back and stuff.
Oh, God, it was so horrible. Ugh.
And then, you know, with The Undertaker, this was a great match. At this time, as a kid watching this match on pay-per-view, I felt like Randy Orton was going to end the streak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they built that. I mean, you really I felt like it was. I mean, I was an adult and it felt like it was going to, you know, that's what they were good. That's what they were so good at doing. Like, they were so good at like showing you like coming that close, you know, and then like,
and that's the thing, like, I liked about this. This was the start of the feud for Randy and Undertaker, because then eventually at No Mercy, we had, you know, Bob Orton and Randy go against The Undertaker, and they put him in the casket. And then we saw, you know, Randy Orton being the sole survivor at Survivor Series, and, you know, pretty much being the sole survivor. And then we see The Undertaker come back in probably the best shape he was in his career. That leads to the main event of Armageddon inside the Hell in the Cell. And that was a fantastic way to end the feud between the Legend Killer and the Dead Man.
And that was still only a 14-minute match.
Only 14 minutes, man. But they did an incredible job from 1 second to 14 minutes and 14 seconds. They told the story.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the way to do it.
And that's the thing, man, with Randy Orton. After he left Evolution in 2004, they tried having him as a babyface. It didn't work. And I think what better way to bring back the Legend Killer than having him work with the Phenom around this time, because it brought a whole nother edge to Randy Orton, and it made us remember why we hated him. And he's the Legend Killer.
I don't know. The Undertaker was kind of a Legend Killer himself.
Well, yeah, in the early days, man, but now this is when Undertaker's becoming a legend.
Yep, and he's becoming a legend himself. Yep.
So moving on now to WrestleMania 22, big time. We had The Undertaker going against Mark Henry inside the casket match. How did you feel about this match at the time?
Mark Henry.
Because they were giving this man a serious push at the time. They had, you know, Batista written off TV because Mark Henry, you know, injured him in the cage afterward. Yeah. And they were starting to really push Mark Henry as, you know, one of their top heels on SmackDown.
Oh, absolutely. He was not being built as, you know, they were stopping with the cartoony stuff with him, you know, this comedy stuff, and they were starting to make him, you know, world's strongest man. It was, you know, should be built as a monster, you know, and yeah, I like this. I like this a lot.
And I think that around the time, like, this was a great way for Undertaker to go into his 14th WrestleMania against one of the strongest heels there. But my only problem, and this goes back to Kane around the time too, that I didn't mention. One thing about these matches that they did with The Undertaker, the builds were fantastic. The matches were fantastic. But afterwards, this didn't happen with Mark Henry, but this happened with Kane. Afterwards, that's where I lost all my momentum for the Big Red Monster, Kane. Because, of course, when he took the mask off, he was very scary, very imitating, you know, had a great run with, you know, having feuds with, like, Rob Van Dam and Shane McMahon. And then, you know, going from all that to losing to The Undertaker in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
It took away so much from me. But with Mark Henry, it took away from him for a little bit until, you know, the PG era where he started to pick up that momentum again. And that's one thing I'm noticing here with some of these WrestleMania matches in, you know, the Ruthless Aggression era.
Absolutely. That's a good call. It's a good take. And this match was only 9 minutes and 28 seconds.
Absolutely, man. Crazy. But I was happy to see Mark Henry, though, get an opportunity like this.
Yeah.
Because he never really got that
in a serious moment. Yeah, a serious moment. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as a kid, I fucking hated him. But he was doing his job right.
Yeah, exactly. If you hated the character, you were doing their job. Absolutely.
So moving on now to WrestleMania 23 in 2007. The Animal Batista defends the World Heavyweight Championship against the Dead Man Undertaker, because at the Royal Rumble that year, the Undertaker won his first ever Rumble, and he chose to go against the Animal Batista. And I gotta say, this was a great match. I think one of Batista's best matches in his career. and both guys looked incredible. It was just unfortunate when Undertaker won the title. He lost it like a week later because Edge cashed in the money in the bank on him.
Yeah. But yeah, Batista really looked good in this match. For the Undertaker to knock down somebody after Mark Henry, to have somebody as strong as Batista. And how long was this match? Like
15 minutes and 47 seconds.
Okay, so it was a little bit longer than even the Randy Orton match. So,
and the thing I liked about this was the start of, it was a start of something great between the two, because they would put on these classics during the SmackDown pay-per-views.
They had good chemistry. They had really good chemistry.
Like, I remember their last man standing match I think it was Backlash or Judgment Day that year. Fantastic. And the best part I like about this transition from 2007 to 2008 was, even though The Undertaker lost the title too soon, as a New School fan here, I do appreciate this. They sort of had a long-term plan for this, because Edge, cashed in the Money in the Bank on Undertaker. Then, we go all the way to WrestleMania 24 in, 2008, which this is definitely one of my favorite matches. We had the Rated R Superstar Edge defend the World Heavyweight title against The Undertaker.
Yes.
And remind you, at this time, what made this match so special was, believe it or not, I bet you didn't know this, Edge was undefeated as well.
Oh, okay. No,
So
I wasn't aware of that.
Streak.
See, I learned stuff too.
I think Edge was 7-0 at this time.
Okay. No, I was not aware of that. That's really cool.
Not, there were reports that, recently surfaced that WWE and Undertaker actually wanted Edge to end the streak.
And he didn't want to do it, you're saying?
And Edge, in a recent interview, told WWE and told The Undertaker, I have too much respect for you. I cannot be the one to end the streak.
Yes, I did hear that. I did see that somewhere too. Yes.
And I got to say, this main event between Edge and The Undertaker was fantastic, because they've had, this rivalry build up for so long, and they waited until this moment to go at it. And then we would get classics with these two, like SummerSlam inside the Hell in the Cell, Edge versus Undertaker. Great match. And they just had a great rivalry. And I think The Undertaker at the time really helped Edge, be one of the top heels in the Ruthless Aggression era, and made him a main event talent.
Absolutely.
So how did you feel about Edge around this time in 2008?
Oh, I always loved Edge, even when he came out with the Brood. I mean, I was always a big Edge fan.
You were an Edge head.
I was.
All right, so at this time, when he beats Edge, he becomes 16-0. We're getting close to the wire now.
Oof.
So now moving on to the next match we have here at WrestleMania 25. We had a dream match. We had The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels.
Now this is
first time.
Definitely one of my absolute favorites of all time.
And that's the thing about this match here. This was Undertaker's longest WrestleMania match, believe it or not. He wrestled Shawn Michaels for over 30 minutes in their first match. And the way that they built this match, it was Mr. WrestleMania versus the Streak.
Yeah.
Because Shawn Michaels always had the nickname Mr. WrestleMania, because throughout the years, he would always put on, the classics with everybody.
And he always had the best WrestleMania opponents.
So, Chaz, who were some of the opponents Shawn Michaels had through the years that made him Mr. WrestleMania?
Well, I mean, come on. You'd have, obviously, his Iron Man match with Bret Hart, WrestleMania 12. Then he had the two against The Undertaker. He had Ric Flair, Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 21, Chris Benoit, Triple H, WrestleMania 20.
Yep, one of the most forgotten main events of all time.
Yeah,
during that time, because of course with what happened with Chris Benoit.
Match of the year, 1995 versus Diesel at WrestleMania 11.
You were there live for that one, weren't
Yep.
you? How was that match, Chaz, watching it live?
That was really cool, especially after he had turned on him and stuff. That was really cool, because I was a fan of both. I was a fan of that pairing of them,
And that's the thing, like now getting back into, you know, WrestleMania 25, the one thing that really was fascinating to me was watching both of these two come out. The iconic entrances. We had Shawn Michaels with all the white on. He had the white hat. He had the white, you know, jacket. He was coming from the sky, which looked incredible because, of course, you know, you had the dead man, Undertaker, dark versus Shawn Michaels on the light side because, of course, Shawn Michaels, you know, after coming back during the Ruthless Aggression era, like he found God. And they really added
born again,
to this first WrestleMania feud with The Undertaker.
Yeah. He was born again Christian. So it was very cool to see that. It was visually, that was a really great, those entrances were freaking awesome.
Beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was.
So now moving on now to the next Undertaker match. This one, my favorite WrestleMania match of The Undertaker of all time here. WrestleMania 26. It was The Streak versus Career. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. And what I loved about this match here as a new school fan, they did a fantastic job building this because Shawn Michaels just couldn't get over the fact that he couldn't beat The Undertaker, and he felt like he could do it.
Yeah.
So at Elimination Chamber, Chris Jericho ends up winning the world title from The Undertaker because Shawn Michaels ends up screwing him in the match, which leads to, you know, the Career versus Streak match.
Right. And even this one was close. You thought Michaels was going to be able to do it, and
such a sad moment, man. Such a sad moment.
Yeah.
I cried when that happened as a kid. I was very sad.
I mean, and being such a big Shawn Michaels
for WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, like throughout the years that I can really acknowledge and appreciate was the chemistry that they both had. Even during the Attitude Era, when they both didn't like each other, they still put on 5-star classics.
Their chemistry was phenomenal. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And I loved how it came back full circle, and like they went from both like not liking each other because of course Undertaker didn't like Shawn Michaels' attitude.
No.
And you know, from them going from that to, you know, being best friends now, it's such an amazing thing to see.
It's really cool. That is really cool. I mean, you know, and for him to, you know, acknowledge what his issues were back then, you know, because, you know, I mean, he was, you know, with the drugs and everything. And, you know, that's why nobody liked him. And then, of course, Undertaker being, you know, head of the locker room and stuff. So
now around this time, Undertaker started to go on a part-time schedule after this match with Shawn Michaels, which, you know, I don't blame him for doing that because at the time, this was, you know, he started his career in 1990. So he's going on 20 years at this point.
So they were saving him for special shit, you know.
And those special shits were WrestleMania matches.
Yeah.
And I loved that, you know, they did that for, you know, The Undertaker because we ended up getting a lot of classic matches until obviously the Brock Lesnar thing that happened. But we're going to be getting into that in the main event of this topic because, of course, we're talking about the streak. And obviously the main event's got to be when the streak ended.
Yep.
But now, you know, getting into The Undertaker's 19th WrestleMania match. This was at WrestleMania 27. The Undertaker versus Triple H in a no-holds-barred match. And I remember this as a kid. They showed this video package for weeks. And a lot of people thought that Sting was actually going to be the one to face Undertaker because like they showed, like, obviously you saw the tombstones and stuff. So you knew it was Undertaker. But then, like, you had the rain. They showed like a crow. So a lot of people thought that Sting was going to TNA wrestling at the time and, you know, have that dream match with The Undertaker. But it ended up being Triple H and The Undertaker. They both came out at the same time. And that's when the challenge was issued for WrestleMania 27.
Yes.
And this match also was incredible as well.
Oh, again, somebody else that had great chemistry together. These guys.
Absolutely.
sure.
And I'm noticing a pattern here now. Like, we're going through a lot of these names, and they're putting Undertaker against some of the best names at this time, which I think, was the right thing to do because, of course, in the beginning of the WrestleMania streak, when we're talking, the old school stuff, he was going against legends like, King Kong Bundy, Jake the Snake Roberts.
Legends who are at the end of their careers and kind of dying out. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see like him go from that to, going against some of the best around that time. And even legends that were also, on the path of going part-time and, slowly ending their wrestling careers as well. So then, we go on to his 20th WrestleMania match. He goes against Triple H because, of course, Triple H can't get over the fact now that he couldn't beat The Undertaker, just like his
same as Shawn.
And this one felt even more special because these two wrestled in a Hell in a Cell match, and they built it as an end of an era match. And Shawn Michaels was the special guest referee.
Yes.
But added more drama to it because, of course, The Undertaker was the one that ended Shawn Michaels' streak and ended his career.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
plus the history
when these two, would go at it,
right?
Pretty much, like in this moment here, this is where I thought The Undertaker was going to lose because how are you going to beat freaking Triple H and having Shawn Michaels as the referee?
Yeah, because of their history with DX, too. So I thought he was gonna, do a fast count or something, at the time. I thought he was gonna, definitely screw The Undertaker on that one. And so did everybody. I mean, that's the way they built it.
And it was great storytelling. And the best part, I think, for that match was the last shot of all three of them on the ramp. Pretty much, it just felt like an end of an era.
Yeah, that was a very, very iconic shot.
And that's what I want to know as an old school fan, Chaz. How did you feel about that moment right there at the end, seeing them on the stage and stuff? Because, of course, WWE at the time, they were going in a new direction, and they called this match the end of an era.
And it was truly in the end of an era. And I think that was an iconic match. It was an iconic shot. Just for them to, especially Triple H being in a position that he was to put over The Undertaker like that. I mean, it was awesome. It was
just a great match overall.
Beautiful.
And what I liked was when they had The Undertaker going in this part-time schedule, he was putting on classics. So like his goal now in WWE was to put on these 30-minute classics.
Because he could rest,
He would be able to rest and get himself prepared and ready for, a Mania Classic.
Absolutely.
So now moving on now to his 21st WrestleMania match. This was at WrestleMania 29 on April 7th, 2013. The Undertaker went on to face the best in the world, CM Punk. And of course, this time it felt more personal, the feud, because unfortunately, Undertaker's manager, Paul Bearer, passed away in the beginning of, 2013.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of criticism for this, but they added Paul Bearer into the storyline, having Undertaker, appreciate and acknowledge him. And then you have CM Punk, of course, come out and pretty much, take the ashes and just dump them right on the stage.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of criticism for that. And now as an old school fan, Chaz, I want to know, how did you feel about that? Because some like Undertaker and other guys came out and they said Paul Bearer would have wanted that.
Oh, absolutely.
But other people, thought that it was disrespectful because he passed away. What were your thoughts on that?
No, I think Paul Bearer definitely, he was an entertainer, and he definitely would have approved that. He would have been all about that for sure. Because if he wasn't dead and the storyline, if he was dead in storyline or something, or whatever, and they did that, he would have been definitely all about it. So I don't buy that. And you know how much, I'm not going to say if something is disrespectful. Yeah, it is disrespectful in a way, but obviously Undertaker's not as close as him and Paul Bearer were, that he's not going to do something to disrespect. They were like best friends, for all those years, traveling together for all those years. I mean, he's not going to do something that's going to wrong his friend like that.
And that's the thing, like with, Paul Bearer, like he always put the business first.
Yes.
And especially, with his character and stuff, I think Paul Bearer would have been okay with it because that's how much he loved the business. He loved, telling a story, and this, really told a good story. And at the same time, this story really honored and acknowledged Paul Bearer for all the accolades and being one of the greatest managers of all time, which, by the way, to the old school fans and new school fans, we do have an episode earlier in the podcast series where, Chaz and I talked about some of the greatest managers, and we really talked about Paul Bearer, Percy Pringle. Recommend you guys to, go check that out. But I really liked how they acknowledged Paul Bearer in this.
Yeah, me too.
And Punk, got a lot of heat for this, and Punk was a very good heel. And I
but
think
that's what heels. That's what heels did.
Paul Bearer to the storyline, it made the match must watch.
Yeah,
you wanted to see Undertaker demolish CM Punk.
Yes,
and hold that urn up for Paul Bearer and have that beautiful moment.
And another thing you asked me, and for Paul Bearer having been so old school himself, that's how you get heat. He would definitely have approved it because CM Punk got so much heat, not only with the crowd, but all over social media. But he would have definitely been like, that was an old school heel move. That's something Rowdy Roddy Piper would have done back in the day.
And there's a difference. Look, and there's a difference between doing that than what, they wanted Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, to do the night Roman Reigns, announced that, he had cancer.
Oh, yeah.
Two totally different things. And as long as the people that are working in the storyline and stuff feel comfortable doing it, then I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And of course, Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose did not feel comfortable at all doing that. And that's why he refused to do that. And he has that right. And
definitely.
I think, in the situation here, I'm sure, WWE, they talked to The Undertaker and they asked him, of course, how he felt about it. And if Undertaker didn't feel comfortable doing it, he wouldn't have done it.
Of course not.
But he knows Paul Bearer would have definitely done something like that.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
That was an old school move.
Very old school.
Yes.
So now our main event topic for this week's episode of Old School versus New School. Undertaker losing to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30, going 21-1. One of the most shocking things that ever happened in sports entertainment, professional wrestling. Now
it's so hard to watch that match.
How do you feel about them making the decision to end the streak?
Did not like it. I didn't like Brock. I was in shock. I mean, you see that meme of that kid that,
the grown man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think personally, I don't care what anybody thinks. This is my opinion. I don't think even The Undertaker doesn't think Brock Lesnar was the right person to have done it. It's nothing against Brock Lesnar. Nothing. I don't dislike Brock Lesnar as a wrestler, as a person. I just don't think he was the right one to do it. I definitely, it just didn't make sense at the time. It's just a cringy match. It's so hard to watch, knowing what happened to The Undertaker at the time, with the concussion. It's very hard to watch it.
And it's crazy because The Undertaker doesn't even remember that entire match
doesn't remember
happening.
He don't remember going to the hospital. Nothing. And you can see he's just so vacant. He's just not there. He doesn't remember going through the curtain and nothing.
It's absolutely crazy, man.
Sad. It's sad to see that.
I feel like the reason why they made the decision to end the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, I think there was a couple reasons to it. One of them, his career was winding down.
Yeah.
The injuries were finally starting to catch up
Yeah.
to him. And another reason I think, they decided to do this was because at the time they wanted to push Brock Lesnar and, do the whole, he beat the streak, gives, something for Paul Heyman to talk about, get some heat.
Yeah.
And Brock Lesnar at the time was getting built as this dominant force in WWE. They had him, kick John Cena's ass, kick Randy Orton's ass, kick everybody's ass that was in his way. And he's been dominant friggin'
Yeah, but he was already doing that. You know what I mean? Just, I don't think
you're right. They didn't need him to.
I don't think he needed to do it. I think Roman Reigns would have been the better choice, just like the Undertaker had said.
Yeah, but I don't know. Around that time, I felt
maybe
like
not at that time. Maybe not at that time. But who knows? We don't know, because
that's the thing. Like, I don't know. My thoughts on them, ending the WrestleMania streak with Brock Lesnar, I wasn't a fan of that at all.
No.
That decision, I will admit, they shocked everybody in that moment. I will give WWE that, but I just wasn't a fan at all of Brock being the one to end the streak.
No, he didn't need it.
This would have been a perfect opportunity to put somebody new over, because anybody that gets that opportunity immediately, they are over as fuck.
Yep. Absolutely.
As one of the top heels in the business.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of guys around this time that they could have, given this opportunity to. And they just, missed it completely.
Yep.
Which, absolutely sucks in my opinion.
I agree.
Because they could have even waited until WrestleMania 31 and just had, Bray Wyatt be the one to, end the Undertaker streak.
That would have been really cool.
You could have had Undertaker beat Brock at 30, and then, going into 31, Bray, that's where you could have passed the torch over to Bray.
That would have been
Bray Wyatt should have been the fucking one to end the streak, not
there
Roman
you go,
Reigns,
buddy.
not Brock Lesnar. Should have been the Eater of Worlds, Bray Wyatt, because then Bray Wyatt would have not friggin' been jobbing out and keep losing important matches and stuff.
That's great. What a great take that was. Yep.
It should have been Bray Wyatt at some point. Like, I know 30, he wasn't on the main roster yet. He was still on NXT because he came to main roster towards SummerSlam of 2013 when the Wyatt family attacked Kane, and that's when the feud started with the Inferno match. They could have, built Bray Wyatt strong from 2013 to 2014 when he went against The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and that could have been where the streak ended. And Bray Wyatt would have been the next Undertaker easily right there. And he would not be in the situation that he is fucking in right now.
He wouldn't have had to do the whole Fiend thing and,
Wouldn't have to do the Firefly Funhouse shit.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be doing all this fucking Doherty Explorer
playing
shit
with puppets.
Right now.
Fucking, Uncle Boots and, yeah.
Because the Eater of Worlds could have been the next Undertaker easily. And you can't tell me I'm wrong on that.
No, that was great. Yeah.
Because let's be real, like the best Bray Wyatt is easily the Eater of Worlds.
Oh God,
family Bray. The first Bray Wyatt that was on the main roster.
Absolutely.
That was the best Bray Wyatt we got.
By far.
Everything else, I will give him credit. Absolutely creative.
Yeah. Very
it's
creative.
Never going to be as good.
But there's just too many Easter eggs, like we were talking about earlier. It's too many. It's just too much. And just like you were talking about, on the talk show, it's just too many Easter eggs.
Should have been Bray Wyatt to end the streak, or you could have had Seth Rollins end the streak. That could have put him even more over because they were trying to build him as, the top authority heel at the time. They could have done, Seth Rollins in that situation.
Well,
Dean
they
Ambrose
had their
could have
reasons.
been put over in that situation. It just sucks that they wasted a huge opportunity
on somebody that didn't need it. Yeah.
Nothing against Brock Lesnar.
No,
fantastic
absolutely.
talent, first-class Hall of Famer in WWE.
No, absolutely not.
But when it's all said and done, this could have been the perfect opportunity to put somebody over. And I know even The Undertaker would have, rathered Roman over Brock.
Yeah.
And it could have probably put Roman Reigns even more over with being a heel.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, at the time, Vince McMahon, you know, wanted Roman to be the top babyface.
Yeah.
But hey, everything happens for a reason. Now
Yeah.
he's main eventing WrestleMania 900 days as champion and having the greatest run of his life.
Yes,
Can't wait
sir.
for that match on friggin' Sunday. Which we'll be doing a crazy live watch along for both nights of WrestleMania, Saturday and Sunday night. Live in real life, IRL, me, Old School Chaz, Danny, Ben, and everybody else that will be coming over. It's going to be huge. You thought the Rumble was huge? Wait until this stream.
That's nothing. That's going to look like Undertaker and Jimmy Snuka.
Damn. But guys, let us know in the comment section below your favorite Undertaker match.
Yeah.
This
and your
was,
thoughts on who should have ended the streak.
And this week, you know, we wanted to dive in and really go deep about, you know, the streak and talk about some of the matches and, you know, some of the opponents that he went against and our thoughts, of course, on Brock Lesnar ending the streak. We thought that this would be a great WrestleMania week topic for us to talk about. If you guys enjoyed this week's episode of Old School versus New School, make sure to smash that like button now. If you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, subscribe, turn on the post notifications. The link's down in the description below. You can go follow Chaz and I on our social medias, and you can go follow me on my other YouTube channels as well. All that down below. In addition, if you want shorter clips of these podcasts that we do here on the We Are Wrestling channel, we're posting them on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All that down below. And you guys are definitely going to want to stay tuned for Mania Week because we got lots of insane content coming out to you guys. Predictions, live watch-alongs, trivia. You're not going to want to miss it. To all the We Are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide, we are taking over. Peace.
Cheers.